In the second video, we are going to review factoring by taking out the greatest common factor. Factors are terms that are multiplied together to give you a product. A greatest common factor is your largest factor that divides evenly into each term. Now, these factors can be numbers or they can be variables. We're going to look at both situations here. So number 5, we've got 2x to the 4th power plus 4x squared minus 2. So what I first look at is your coefficients. These are your numbers, your numbers in front of your variables, or even your constant at the end. So we've got 2, we've got 4, and we've got 2. So we need to decide what is our greatest common factor between those three numbers. Our greatest common factor is going to be 2. That is the largest number that can divide evenly into 2 and 4. I'm going to write that off to the side. Our greatest common factor is 2. And then you want to check for your variables. We've got x to the 4th, x to the 2nd, and then in our last term we have no x's. Because there is not an x in all three terms, we cannot say that there's a greatest common factor of x. So our only greatest common factor is 2. Now, how we actually factor out this 2? What we are going to do is we are going to divide each of these terms by 2. We are dividing by our greatest common factor. And then we will rewrite what we are left with in parentheses. So 2x to the 4th divided by 2 leaves us with x to the 4th plus, let me rewrite that, looks kind of weird. Then we have 4x squared divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. But because we're not dividing by any x terms, we got x squared. And then the last piece, negative 2 divided by 2 gives us negative 1. All right, I know we're used to those things simplifying out, but that does simplify to 1. So we want to keep that in. And that is factoring by greatest common factor. Now on number 6, you can see we have x cubed plus x to the 5th. There are no coefficients here. There are no numbers here, or our coefficients are just 1. And there's no other constant. So we're not going to have a number as our greatest common factor like we did in number 5. However, we have x to the 3rd power and x to the 5th power. Both of these terms have x in them. And to determine what their greatest common factor is, you always go with the x value that has the smallest exponent. In this situation, it's going to be x to the 3rd. So our greatest common factor is going to be x to the 3rd. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide each of these terms by x to the 3rd, just like we did in our first one, dividing by your greatest common factor. And what we're going to be left with, x to the 3rd divided by x to the 3rd, is going to be 1. And then x to the 5th divided by x to the 3rd is going to leave us with x squared. So now let's look at 7. On number 7, we have 6x cubed plus 9x squared minus 12x. So we need to look at both aspects here. Do we have values? What kind of terms do we have for our greatest common factor here? Between 6, 9, and 12, our greatest common factor that can go into all three of those terms is going to be 3. 3 can go into 6, 9, and 12. But then we need to look at our variables. We have x cubed, we have x squared, and then we have a regular x. All three of our terms have an x value attached to them. So that means that we do have a variable for a greatest common factor. And you take the one with the smallest exponent, which in this case is going to be a regular x. So we're going to divide each one of these terms by 3x to get what is left in our parentheses. Now when we divide these, we divide our numbers and then our variables. So 6 divided by 3 gives us 2. And then x cubed divided by x, think of it as you're taking an x away. So x cubed divided by x is going to give us x squared. All right, moving to the second term, 9x squared divided by 3x. 9 divided by 3 gives us 3. X squared and x. If we take our greatest common factor away, take away one of those x's, we're going to be left with an x. And then lastly, negative 12, keep that negative sign with it. Negative 12 divided by 3 gives us negative 4. And then x divided by x is just 1x. Is just, those are going to simplify out, so we're not going to have an x term at the end of that. All right, and then our last one, 8. We've got negative 4, 16, and negative 64. A number that can go into 4, 16, and 64 is going to be 4. Now, a helpful tip that I have, since that first term is a negative 4, let's take out our GCF to be a negative 4. It will make things easier in the long run. Then we see we have an x squared, an x, and then no x, which means we do not have an x value that can be our greatest common factor. So we are just going to divide each of these terms by negative 4. And what that's going to leave us with, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is a positive 1. And we'll have a positive 1x squared, so we can just write x squared. 16 divided by negative 4 is going to give us a negative 4x. And then negative 64 divided by a negative 4 will give us a positive 16. If you have any questions, stop me and let me know.